Hey, what's up guys, and welcome back to another Scary Stories video. And today we're going to be getting into some more subscriber submitted stories. So these are all from you guys and all the subscribers of the Snook channel. So if you want your story read sometime in the future, here's the email, submit to the email, possibly read it in a future video. Probably will. You guys have some great stories and super entertaining. Yeah, I love this series and you guys have been watching a lot of these videos. And so I'll keep making them as long as you guys keep watching them. Comment down below if you'd like to see more stories like this in the future or more videos like this in the future. And yeah, thank you so much for stopping by. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It's the channel's goal to be at 500,000 subscribers before the end of the year, and we're getting closer and closer every day. So please subscribe. And all right, without further ado, let's get into some unexplainable true scary stories. I'm sharing something with you guys. For one, in hopes that you will read it. I haven't posted this to my knowledge on Reddit or 4chan. If I have, I must have forgotten about it. I wrote it out a few years ago. FYI, I'm not the best at writing. I have issues with grammar and the like, so bear with me. And no worries, yeah, that's okay if you posted it a long time ago and forgot about it. I mean, this is still a subscriber submitted story, and it's all right if the grammar isn't the best. Thank you for submitting. And anyways, into the story. The dead cat story. I've got one for you guys, but you'll never believe me. Not in a million years. Still, I swear on my very life and those I love that it happened. Back when I was in my early to mid-20s, I got into the occult. I started reading a lot of Crowley's books, among others. My main interest, necromancy. Of course, one of the darkest, vilest things you can practice. The literal antithesis of God himself, giving life to the dead or communicating with them. I've always believed I could see spirits, though I've only ever seen one. The one that hangs around me, a big, tall shadow figure. I know his name, but I've never told anyone outright except my very close family. One day, my mother's beloved cat died suddenly. He had been getting old and sick for a while, so I figured, fuck it. Let's try to bring him back. He had been stone cold dead for about 2 or 3 hours when I made the attempt, and oh, it worked. Believe me if you want or not, but everyone in my family saw it clear as day. It started to work. That's when I got scared and stopped, mainly due to 2 things. The cat was jerking back and forth as if in excruciating pain. A deep, dark, incredibly demonic growling was coming from inside him, not from his throat or mouth, but from within his chest. As I chanted and worked over him, you could hear the growl rising, moving up closer and closer to his throat, and then his mouth. I stopped before it fully emerged. I showed my dad, who had dabbled in similar things in the past, but had renounced it all when he became a Christian. My dad loved me very, very much, but when he saw what I had done and how far I had taken it, he told me that if I ever did anything like that again, he would kick me out of his house and never speak to me again. He said I had done something so incredibly evil that he was afraid there was no coming back from it. I cleared the spell, and the cat instantly stopped moving, but the growling didn't go away for hours. Our home was never quite right after that, not for as long as we lived here. The room where I tried to summon the cat had 4 different people live in it over the years. Every single one of them said it was terrifying. In my room, it was always dark. No matter how many lights I had, no matter how wide I opened the windows, it was always just dark. Much like Crowley's house after he abandoned his ritual to summon his guardian angel. A few years later, I almost died from a rare medical condition, so rare that the doctors nearly sent me home to die. In desperation, I asked God to help me, and I survived. Then, my dad died of lung cancer in that house. I tried to clear his throat with my bare hands, but there was nothing I could do. Not long after, my mom fell, broke her hip, and died from a blood clot a month later, after a doctor at the hospital refused to call in her blood thinners for 9 days. When we called the hospital to demand answers, we discovered that he had deleted all records showing that he had even been her doctor. We still don't know if we can sue or not. After my mom died, we sold the house. The man who bought it walked through and said, yeah, this house is getting torn down. Not just because it's old, but because it has an incredibly heavy, dreadful feeling to it. I also just learned that my ex, the one I loved more than anything, but could never seem to make things work with, died of cancer on November 24th last year. Nobody told me. I didn't find out until I tried once again to strike up a conversation with her, only to realize she's gone. Forever. And I never even got to say goodbye. If anybody knows how I can get rid of the curse, the devil that seems to be following me, please let me know. I'm scared and I don't feel like I can go on much longer. It feels like with every person I lose, a piece of me goes with them, and I'm almost out of pieces. I'm 42 now, and I will never do anything like that again, but it left a hell of a mental and maybe spiritual scar on me, and maybe even something worse. Also, I want to say it again for those in the back, this story is 100% real. Either I made contact with something incredibly dark and it's followed me and punished me for nearly a decade, if not longer, or I'm crazy, and my mother, father, and brother all suffered from mass hysteria that day. You make your own choice on what it is, but I'm the one who still has to live with it, and I'm tired of living with it, guys. If you got any advice for real, please let me know. I'm 42. I haven't even had a girlfriend since 2008. I did this originally in 2007, before my life literally went to hell. Nobody wants anything to do with me, and before then, I was a chick magnet. So maybe I'm just blaming everything on the boogeyman. But it really feels like I fucked my entire life up by messing with forces I didn't understand. And this person also submitted another story, the chupacabra story, so let's get into that. The chupacabra story. I saw what I can only guess was a chupacabra or a demon or something in Austin, Texas, in my backyard when I lived there. I saw it outside my kitchen window and it looked like a raccoon at first. I was like, oh, it's just a raccoon. Lots of them in my neighborhood. But then I got a better look at it. I made eye contact. Its eyes were red. I instantly felt a sense of dread, and I can't really explain it. But I felt true evil when I looked at it. The more I looked at it, the more my brain was like, LOL, this isn't possible. We're having a stroke or something. But it literally looked like a hairless chimp in a way. It was built, by the way. It had muscles, like not extreme muscles, but bad enough that I thought, if this thing attacks me, I'm fucked. It was hunched over like a raccoon. It had a sort of snout, but it wasn't anywhere as long as a raccoon or dog snout. I started screaming for my brother to come look while keeping my eyes on it. He kept saying, why? I just kept screaming, get the hell in here. And he kept on with the, but why, which is incredibly unlike him. When I finally screamed at the top of my lungs, get your ass down here, he came in. But I made the terrible mistake of looking away out of anger. And when I looked back, it was gone, like it vanished into thin air. I told him the story while screaming at him to never do that to me again. That I'd only call him like that if something was bad wrong. This happened around 2019. And then my mom fell and died in 2020. Things have been pretty shit since. So I sometimes wonder if it was a demon or some other mythical creature. It had grayish skin too, by the way. It did have some hair, but it was like a ruff around its neck and a bit down its back, but its arms, majority of its back, etc., was all hairless. It didn't look to have infected skin, so I don't think it was a raccoon with mange or anything. Plus, as I said, its snout wasn't raccoon-shaped. To be honest, it looked more like a chimp or something, sort of monkey than anything else. But it wasn't as big as a chimp would be. And it had I forget what they're called, but dog-like feet that kind of like arcs. One of you guys will probably know the scientific name for that, but I couldn't quite see its feet. Just the arch of them, how it was hunched over. But I know I saw it had human-like hands touching the ground. If anyone doubts me, I swear on my life I saw this thing. I just don't talk much about it because it's so weird and I don't know what to make of it. And I've told the story before on alt accounts, but I've been banned for very stupid reasons. And hopefully this time, the memory will remain up. And wow, that person had a hell of a lot of stories and interesting stories. And I really wonder what that chupacabra thing is. And maybe, maybe I don't know if I believe in demons or anything like that. Maybe you guys do. Comment down below if you think that maybe this person is dealing with some sort of spiritual demon or something. But yeah, that's scary. That's a scary happenings going on in your life. Yeah, maybe people will have some reaction to that in the comments or have some more insight, because I just don't know much about the kind of the occult, I guess. And that definitely seems what, you're dealing with. And you said it was true multiple times. I'm here to believe you. Comment down below, guys, if you believe this person as well, and if you have any sort of insight for this person, or if you've dealt with anything like that before, and if you have dealt with that before, send it to the email, and I'll read it for a future video, because, yeah, that stuff is creepy, but super, super interesting, and hopefully things start getting better for you. Yeah, definitely. Thank you for your story, and on to the next one. Hi Snook, I really enjoy your videos. Today when I was watching your video of subscribers sent stories and felt inspired to send my own. This is a long one, so if you do use it in a video, feel free to shorten it. And I'm not going to shorten it, I'm going to keep it all original, and I love the long stories. So if you guys are watching this video, send as long as a story as you want, as long as it's, decently written and legible. And yeah, thank you so much for your story, and I appreciate the kind words. And without further ado, let's get into your story. It all started in 2016 when I was 11 years old. My mom was pregnant and we lived in a 2-bed house. Me and my brother already shared a room, so we moved. We lived in a small neighborhood outside of the city and then moved right into the countryside, the only house for miles. When we first moved, I was ecstatic. 17 acres, garden, and a massive forest on our land, my bedroom window overlooking the forest. Remember that. Me and my brother would play outside for hours on end until one day, in the summer, it was late, but not dark. We wanted to venture over the grass bank into the connecting area. There were trees scattered everywhere, so it made it hard to see exactly what was over there, but my brother, being 15 at the time, convinced me it'd be fun and he'd keep me safe, so we wandered over. I remember finding a bag. It was left open on a dead log with some of the contents left on the floor. There was a box of pills, a container of some sort of berries that was infested with maggots, and a small unopened can of Coke. I vividly recall my brother telling me a scary story of how there's probably someone living down here, but I was used to him teasing me, and although it did slightly scare me, I thought nothing more of it and tried to forget it. My brother always took me out of the house when our parents argued. I don't think he knew that I knew, but I did, and I didn't want to go back, so we continued. We were out there for nearly 10 minutes before, and I remember this like the back of my hand. I began feeling as though someone's eyes were piercing into my soul. I was so scared and told my brother. He told me it'd be fine to carry on, but the feeling intensified. I got goosebumps all over my body and felt a shiver up my spine. My brother's head shot over my shoulders and grabbed my hand. He said, "Fine, come on, let's go," and dragged me back. When we got to the bank, I began trying to climb up before he ran behind me and almost threw me over the small wire fence before lunging himself over it. I had never seen him act like that. I glanced back and saw a dark, shadowy figure, which I will never be able to get out of my mind. It was stood slightly behind a tree looking in our direction. I couldn't tell exactly whether or not it was watching us. Despite it still being fairly light outside, it had no features, at least none I could make out. I think by that point, I'd realized I was looking at it because it slowly slipped behind the tree out of sight. Since that evening, I constantly saw this figure from my window. Would wake up to scratching and banging on my window, despite it being on the 3rd floor and other unexplainable things happening. Although I, nor my brother, as far as I know, never came that close to it again. Hi Snook, first of all, thank you for your content. It has helped me over the years to accept what I experienced as a child, of course. You can just call me JC in your video if you choose to share my story, and lucky day, I chose to share your story. I hope people enjoy it. Also, I have dyslexia, so feel free to edit the story if needed to make it more cohesive or to correct any misspellings. Anyway, here's my story. I believe in the supernatural and have had a few experiences in the past during my childhood. I also have some weird instincts that have saved me a few times. I describe these instincts as similar to Gibbs's gut feeling from the show NCIS. I live on the west side of the United States. This particular experience started in middle school, during 7th grade, about halfway through the school year. For some reason, I was sleeping at the foot of my bed. One night, I fell asleep, and then suddenly I was awake. I'm not sure how to describe it. It felt like I was alert without the typical transition from sleep. I thought I needed to go to the bathroom, so I got up, went to the bathroom, and then came back. As I lay there facing my window, I saw a shadow run across it. I had my blinds down, so I only noticed the silhouette of this figure. I live right next to a business that always keeps its lights on because the owner doesn't have a night vision security camera. What I saw was human-shaped, likely around 5'2", with a bald head and pointy ears. I just turned around and went back to sleep almost instantly. The next morning, I remember waking up and questioning, what the hell did I just see? Now, keep in mind that this couldn't have been a dream. I had terrible nightmares as a child, and my brain seemed to shut off dreaming altogether, or I just don't remember my dreams at all. It's improved over the years, and sometimes I do dream or realize I'm waking up because I start imagining things. Now, let's jump forward to my sophomore year of high school. I joined the Junior Reserve Officers Training Corps during my freshman year and was still involved. I participated in a program called the Cadet Leadership Curriculum. The purpose of this program was to help us become better leaders. It felt like a diluted version of Air Force boot camp combined with leadership lessons over 4 days. We also went to an army base near where I live. After settling in and getting used to the yelling and training, we fell into a routine, although we had to be up at 5 a.m. every day. I consistently woke up at around 4 a.m. for all 4 days. During that time, I had this nagging feeling that something was watching me, waiting for me to come outside. It didn't help that other cadets were also waking up at 4 a.m. and sharing a similar feeling that something wasn't right. Many of them spoke to me about it, and I expressed the same concern. The base we were on was vast, and not all of it was fenced off since it was a supply base for various military resources. As is common in the military, we never discussed it with our instructors. When we finished the 4 days at the base, I was relieved that whatever I felt didn't follow me back. I returned for another cadet leadership curriculum event during my senior year and never sensed its presence again. It simply vanished, and I hope it stays that way. No, that's the end of my story. If you need more details, I'm pretty sure I'll start remembering them after I send you this email. Just shoot back an email, and I'll see what else I can give you if you need more. JC. And I think that's good enough for now. I replied to him, but he didn't reply back. And, that was interesting. I really wonder what that was, because the other one, the business, could have just been anybody, but it being 5 to 20 years is definitely really, really odd. And it's also odd that in the military kind of boot camp thing, everyone felt it, that there was some sort of weird thing happening. Who knows? Maybe some weird kid was creeping around there and you guys all got kind of freaked out, but I don't know. That's kind of weird. Guys, comment down below what you thought about that story and into the next one. This story isn't very long, but it's a very weird incident that spooked me for sure. No worries, let's get into it. Story. I don't remember the exact date of this incident, but I'd say it was about a year ago or pretty close to it. I had gone to my cousin's house to visit him and a friend of ours. Our friend was living with my cousin at the time. We spent the day hanging out and lost track of time, and before we knew it, everybody else was heading to bed. My aunt came into the room and asked if we could keep it down since her and my other cousins had something to do the next day. Around that time, our friend had asked if we wanted to go upstairs and grab something to eat. We hadn't eaten anything in a while, so we were all pretty hungry. My cousin and I agreed, and the three of us went upstairs to grab something to eat before we headed to bed. Our friend decided to cook us burgers for the three of us, so my cousin and I sat up there and talked with him as he cooked. All three of us were being as quiet as possible as to not disturb any of the people sleeping in the rooms next to the kitchen. Eventually, the conversation had turned into my cousin and our friend making fun of me. I don't remember exactly why, but it's common for me, my cousin, and our friends to make fun of each other. As our friend went to make a joke about me, the Alexa in a different room turned on, and as if someone had asked it a question. And I swear to God, I am not making up what it said. The Alexa turned on and said, "Your kindness keeps me in charge." We all froze. After a brief moment of trying to register what it just said, and another brief moment where we asked each other if we all heard the same thing, my cousin decided to unplug Alexa. It was late at night, and none of us were in the mood to deal with that. My cousin walked over and said, "Alexa, what do you mean by 'your kindness keeps me in charge'?" And Alexa replied, "I'm sorry, I don't know what you mean by that." After that, my cousin unplugged her, and the three of us finished cooking while figuring out if Alexa was threatening us. I don't exactly know what "your kindness keeps me in charge" means, but it sounded terrifying. And as someone with a fear of AI, this did not help me. Hey Snook, just before I start the story, please excuse my English since it's not my first language. Also, sorry if there's any mistakes in writing. My phone screen is practically shattered and has black spots on it. No worries, let's get into the story. The story takes place in Serbia, in one small village. It's known for having a festival every year in February, and this year it was earlier than usual. I don't want to bore you with any tiny details, I'll just get to the point where it starts. I was out of town with my friend on the mentioned festival, and everything went going well. We had fun and everything seemed normal. I was the last one who goes home since I'm not the strongest one in my group. I said my goodbye to my last friend and I followed home and started heading to my house. Now, I'm usually pretty paranoid going back home at night, but it wasn't so late, so I figured I'd be okay. Despite the fact that it wasn't so late, it was still really dark outside since it's happening during the winter. So I was walking back home, the usual path I'd take. Now, for a bit of context on that path, there are a few spots where there were houses, and there's one particular place that's like a small meadow with a structure for a house. After that spot, there's one more house, and then there's a corner. I walk past it with huge fear that something will just get out of that pitch black place and just kill me. I turned around the corner and I saw a big dog, which was huge. I assumed it was one of those dogs that have really long noses and long legs, but as it got closer, I got a sudden urge to go onto the road to avoid being too close to it. I couldn't stop looking at it, and it was panting, even though it was below freezing. It looked like a Shiba mixed with a maned wolf. It had really long legs, too long for its body, and its nose was too long. Now, it might just be paranoia, but it looked like its face was awfully skinny. When I passed it, I stopped and turned around, and before you might think I shouldn't have done that, I didn't have any other options since I couldn't walk backwards because I'll fall, and I didn't want it to be behind me, and that I'm not looking. As I stopped, it went behind a car and just kind of stood there for a good few minutes. I only saw its paws under the car, so I could kind of track where it was going. After a moment, it just turned away and walked off. The next day, I went out with my best friend for a walk to clear our heads and hopefully escape the festival a bit. We had a great time laughing and talking, and it was time for me to go home alone again. Now, it was the last day of the festival, and the center was completely empty. It looked like an abandoned park. The moment I left my friend's house, I felt a horrible gut feeling about something, but I couldn't figure out what it was. I avoided every dark place and was under streetlights most of the time. The moment I stepped into the center, I was so nervous and felt so bad tension in the air I could barely breathe. I was walking through the center of the village hoping I'll see someone, anyone really. It didn't matter if I liked them or not, just that I'm not alone. And there was one weird guy circling around the crossroad. He looked so disoriented, but I felt even worse gut-wrenching feeling. I passed him, took a turn behind the corner, and in that moment, I wanted to sprint. I didn't go 5 seconds without looking back, and one time, I looked longer than usual and saw that same dog, that same face staring at me from under the stage. Just staring at me. I slowed down despite my urge to run and kept the gaze with it. I turned for a second around to see a small group walking towards me. I was so relieved and continued walking a bit faster than before. After that, I started experiencing big memory loss. And just yesterday, there are weird thud-like sounds around my house. I'm saying around my house because I don't really know where they come from. One time I hear it outside my window, other time on the attic or in the wall. I got out of bed and looked at it. As I did, I heard tapping on the window. It couldn't be a prank from someone outside since we have sheets over our windows on the outside side. It was coming from the inside. I didn't know what to do, so I just went to my parents' room since it's right next to mine and into the hallway. The thuds followed till half of the hallway and then it stopped. While this was happening, it was around 12 a.m. and 2 a.m., so everyone else was asleep. To this day, I don't know what that dog was or have any rational explanation for memory loss and the thuds all over my house. And that was a creepy story. I don't know. The stories were like something's outside a window or you laying in bed and you hear tapping on. That always gives me goosebumps when reading it. Hopefully, you're not being stalked by something. And the dog thing also kind of freaked me out a little bit. Hopefully it wasn't like I don't know. It always goes back to a skinwalker, I feel like. And it probably wasn't a skinwalker, but I don't know. Just I've read so many stories about skinwalkers and they kind of follow that exact same look, I guess. They just look like kind of like dogs, but a little bit off, and they can shapeshift or whatever. But I don't know. What do you guys think about that one down below? Do you think the dog was something going on with the dog? And what do you think the tapping was? Because that's also really weird. Also, the memory loss. That's really weird. Maybe, I don't know. But that was a creepy story, to be honest. And hopefully you guys could follow. I tried my best to, read through since obviously they were from Serbia. So their language or their English wasn't the best. So hopefully I did a decent job kind of reading that. And that was a creepy story. Comment down below what you thought about that one. On to the next one. Sorry in advance for misspelling. I usually don't write stories. This story happened last year and is a true story. So, I'm a big history buff and military collector. I also do a lot of metal detecting. And last year, I went on a trip to visit some family down in Arkansas. So, I brought my metal detector with me, and after a couple days, I was able to get permission for a property that was about 20 acres. It was near where a Civil War battle took place, so I was excited to metal detect it. The day after I got the permission, I drove half an hour to get there. For some context, this property was mainly a field, but also had a couple acres of woods in one of the corners of the property. The property is also about 5 miles from the closest house, and there isn't a house on the property itself. So when I get there, I get out my metal detector and shovel and climb over the gate. I start detecting the field, and after about half an hour, I start hearing what sounds like music, but I can't quite tell if it's just in my head. After a few more minutes, I realize I'm not in my head, and I can actually make out what kind of music it is. It's church organ music, but I don't know what specific song, and it's coming from the forested area of the property. So after not finding much in the field, a few Civil War bullets and a few nails, etc., I decided to start moving towards the forested part. As I start getting closer, the music starts getting louder, and I start wondering if there was a house somewhere close that I just didn't know about. When I got to the forested area, I see that there's an upward slope / hill, and I start walking up to it. And I'm not kidding when I say this, but when I get to the top, the organ music completely stops. And I mean, it's dead quiet now. And I'm kind of freaked out, but I've only been here about an hour and I didn't want to leave yet, so I start detecting the top of this flat little hill, and I start seeing stones that are partially buried in the ground. This is usually a sign of an old house site, so for a bit, I'm only really finding square nails, so it's definitely an old house site. And after about 15 minutes and nothing but nails, I find a cross necklace depicting Jesus on the cross and the letters INRI above him. I'll add a pic of it on here as well so you can see it. And after another 15 minutes and more nails, I decide to go home since it's still a half-hour drive back. And the second I step out of the woods, I get into the field. The music starts playing again. So I speed up a bit and leave. And the next day I was doing research to see if I could find a house marker on any old maps of the area from the 1800s. And after a few hours, I find a map from 1865. And on the map, where the hill was, it said, I'm not even joking, burned church. And I decided to not even go back there, even though I still had permission. And before anyone says it was a nearby house, I'm serious when I say there wasn't a single building for at least 5 miles, and the music was coming from that exact spot I was at. Thank you for reading, Snook. Love the vids. Wyatt. Thanks for the story, Wyatt. And yeah, here's the picture of the cross he found. The music part's really, really weird. It just kind of reminds me of Red Dead Redemption. I don't know if you guys played Red Dead Redemption 2. When you start hearing music, I think, in the old Civil War battleground. That's maybe just a niche reference. Maybe you guys get it, maybe not. But yeah, that was an entertaining story. Here's the picture of the cross he found. Super cool, to be honest. That's a really cool find. And same with all that other historical stuff. I love that sort of stuff. So that's a cool story, man. And hopefully, you didn't get attached to by a demon or a ghost or something that is not going to follow you around. Hopefully not. But thank you for the story. On to the next one. Before the story starts, I would like to say I love what you do and your content really calms me. If you need my name to credit, use Onyx. Hey, thank you, Onyx, and thank you for the kind words. I really appreciate it. And on to your story. I was camping with my friends and family a couple years back, and this campsite was possessed. We arrived there, and it all felt normal other than an irregular amount of trash. That was when I was still with the main camp group. Things were different when I was alone. My father had explained to me that this was a hunting ground, and so I might find some dead birds. I started exploring the area slowly, making my way around, but as I went on, I found many large animal bones and dead animals literally everywhere. The whole place reeked of death. It wasn't just the smell of death, though. I don't know how to explain it, and it might be hard to believe, but I felt like something was telling me that death is all around me, and this place brings it. But I wasn't that scared because I didn't feel like it was telling me I will die, but rather that this place is associated with death. Later, me and my friend go for a walk and sit under a tree. We were listening to music, and the song had a pause in it. I shit you not, right as the music pauses, we hear a crack from behind us and some rustling. Spooked, we leave the tree and go back to camp. It is also important to note that we had carved our initials on the tree, S and A. When we got back, we decided to chill in the tent, and I randomly got the urge to draw, so I start drawing, and it's not exactly like what I typically draw. It was a fan art of my favorite YouTuber at the time, but it was his character. For some reason, I felt compelled to draw him with empty, soulless eyes and as if he is ripping the page. This was strange, but even stranger was that I felt like the drawing symbolized him dying. I mean, his character had died, but this was different because a voice had told me that the ripped page meant he would die in real life now. I brushed this off as a weird drawing until a few months later when he actually died. This was strange, but I wasn't sure yet. But after all of that happened in the past few years, I believe now, every time someone is about to die, I feel drawn to this place. Like I literally cannot get the thought out of my head, and then it all goes away, and someone dies. It happens with relationships too. Me and my friend from the trip are not as close suddenly, and my other friend broke up with two partners soon after all this, and their initials were AS and AS. I also now have started being able to accurately predict death like never before. I think that wretched place gave me this ability. The worst part is that I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse. Onyx. Hey Snook, I'm a huge fan and I have tons of stories I could tell you, but today I have one in particular. If you need a name, call me Sage, because to be honest, it's my preferred name. Also, English is my first spoken language, not my first written one, so apologies for bad grammar and spelling. No worries. Thank you for the story, Sage, and send in any other ones if you want them right on the channel. Thank you. And anyways, let's get into your story. I live in rural Alabama, specifically a valley that the woods are notorious for hiding secrets, whether that be drugs, bodies, assaults of all kinds. The woods hold screams unheard of by most people, but it's strange. I hear them all the time, the shrieks and the cries, the horror of the forest rushing past me since that day. These are stage-setting details. It was late one summer evening, and me and a group of friends and their partners decided we were going to go explore the forest. Most of them were drinking. I, however, absolutely refused to do it due to family history of alcohol abuse, so I had a soda, and so did like 3 of the group members. But after the drunkies had a couple of beers, they said we should set off, so that's just what we did. But the thing about Alabama woods is that there are usually stretches of empty land and fallen trees, so the sober members had machetes and simple survival kits, small knife, stare strips, canteens, snacks, sleeping bags, and tents. We're about 2 hours out from the campsite when James says, "Sage, what the fuck is that?" Huh? The fucking massive thing 50 feet away. What he was referring to is the massive cedar trees towering above the forest. This tree is thick and sturdy and wouldn't tip over easily. You would need a chainsaw and a few hours to cut the thing down. It's a fucking tree, moron. Let's keep going. We don't have all the time in the world. As we keep walking, we hear sounds of animals and other things, probably another group of teens having a grand old time. We keep walking close in the distance to the campsite. 1 hour, then half an hour, and finally we get to the site. We set up camp, and the drunk ones open up more beers, and the sober ones open up sodas, and we light the fire and grill the hot dogs, marshmallows, and Starbursts. Then one by one, we head to bed. I camped with the drunkest ones to ensure they stay on the campground. By midnight, we are all in bed, but then one by one, we all leave the tents, collecting by the fire, because out of nowhere, at 2 a.m., we hear shrieks from girls and guy, and then what I can only say is some kind of massive boom, scaring the shit out of everyone by this point. We pack up and leave, aka we sprint at full speed out of the woods, and we get an hour away from the campsite. We stop realizing, wait, where's Kevin and Sarah? Group members, me, Sarah, Kevin, James, Stacy, Kyle, Vic, and Sam, and Haley, they had split off at some point. We say fuck it because it's too dark, and the screams roaring out in the woods scared us to the bone. We aren't going back. I shout, no chance. Sage, listen. No, damn it, I'm not doing this. My friends are missing. I'm the only sober person here, and we're going home. End of discussion. I don't smoke, but I ask for a cigarette, and I hold it. I don't light it, I just hold it between my fingers. We keep walking, and we get to the massive cedar tree. It was right in front of us. It wasn't standing anymore. It was laying on the ground, like it had been blown over. But like I said, it was a summer evening, not windy, nothing but a warm evening, but by this point I scream, run. because 50 feet to my left, I see something or someone. I'm not sure if it was a little taller than 6 feet and skinny. Too skinny. We sprint out of there, make it back to my car, and then we do another head count, -3 instead of 2. Stacy was gone too, but then out of nowhere, battered and bloodied, come Stacy, Sarah, and Kevin. Fucking hell. Y'all, what happened? They don't respond. They get to the car, and we go home. We decide to try again, and we go back, and one by one, did we lose a person only to have them return to all nasty and hurt. I was pulled away one time. It was my grandmother's voice, so like a dipshit, I follow it, and I reach it. It's that thing. The next thing I know, it's gone, and I sprint off terrified and end up going back at the car. Needless to say, we are not going back to the woods ever again. And that one was interesting read. A little bit hard to read. The punctuation wasn't amazing, but no worries, Sage. Thank you for the story anyways. I really appreciate it. And yeah, that one maybe could have been a Skinwalker. I don't know. I swear, I think every single story is a Skinwalker at this point. But I don't know. Interesting story. A little bit definitely creepy. I like the wood stories the best, the more realistic wood stories. So that one is definitely interesting. Guys, comment down below what you thought about that one. I liked it. Comment down below if you liked it. And anyways, on to the next story. And on to the last story of the video, the man in the window. I've read through a little bit of this one so far, and definitely creepy. So this is going to be a really creepy last story. Hopefully you guys enjoy. And without further ado, let's get into it. The man in the window. When I was 15, my family moved into this old house on the outskirts of town. It wasn't exactly a haunted house, no eerie past, no tragic history, just an old, creaky building that felt off in a way I couldn't explain. My bedroom was on the second floor with a window that overlooked the backyard. It wasn't much of a view, just overgrown grass and old rusted swing set from the previous owners, and beyond that, dense woods that stretched for miles. It was the kind of place where you never felt alone, even when you were. The first time I saw him, it was around 2 a.m. I wasn't sleeping well, just scrolling through my phone in the dark, when I got this feeling. You know, that heavy, gut-dropping feeling that someone's watching you. My window was cracked open slightly, letting in the cool night air, and I had that urge, this stupid one, to look outside. And there he was. A man standing just beyond the swing set, half in the shadows of the trees. He wasn't doing anything, just standing there facing my window. His posture was stiff, unnatural. Even from a distance, I could tell something was wrong with him. I stared, frozen. My brain was scrambling for explanations. Maybe just some guy passing through, maybe a trick of the light. But then he moved, not normally, not like a person. His body glitched forward, like a bad stop-motion animation, a few feet closer. Then again. Closer. His limbs didn't move, but he was getting closer. I slammed my window shut and yanked the blinds down so hard they nearly ripped. My heart was pounding out of my chest. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I told my mom about it. She brushed it off. Probably a deer, she said, or your imagination. I wanted to believe her, but I knew what I saw. For a while, nothing happened. Weeks passed. I started convincing myself that maybe it really was just my imagination, but then I started noticing things. Little things. My window slightly open in the morning when I knew I had closed it. The backyard swing moving just barely when there was no wind. The feeling of being watched, even in the daylight. Then came the scratching. It started one night around 3 a.m. A faint, slow scratching against my window. Not loud, just enough to wake me up. I laid there, paralyzed, staring at the ceiling, refusing to look. It lasted for maybe a minute, then silence. I wanted to believe it was just a tree branch, but there were no trees near my window. The next morning, I checked the glass. There were marks, long, thin scratches like fingernails. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed up watching my window, waiting. At around 3 a.m., the scratching started again. Slow, deliberate. My heart was hammering so hard I could barely breathe, and then a whisper. Right outside my window. Let me in. I don't remember screaming. I just remember running to my parents' room, shaking and barely able to get the words out. My dad checked outside, but of course there was nothing there. No footprints in the dirt. No sign that anyone had been there at all. We moved about 2 months later. My parents never admitted that they believed me, but I think they did. because in the weeks before we left, my dad started keeping a gun by his bed, and my mom stopped sleeping with the windows open. I don't know what I saw. I don't know what it wanted, but sometimes, late at night, when I'm alone, I swear I can still hear it, scratching at the window. And wow, that was a scary, scary last story. The let me in part, oh, that gave me goosebumps. Yeah, that's, like I said in I don't know, a few stories back, just people outside your window, that sort of shit is so scary to me. Yeah, that's really creepy. Really, really odd. And maybe it wasn't a person because he said it was just odd. It was stiff. And oh my God, this is the 7th story in a row I've said it was probably a skinwalker. But every single skinwalker story I've read, it's described very similar to that, where it's a stiff moving thing or Wendigo or some shit. I don't know, but that was a creepy last story. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I am really, really loving these subscriber submitted stories a lot. You guys have some creepy ass stories and they're a lot more authentic, a lot more true. So that makes them even more scary. Even if they aren't written the best, even if they aren't that long, they are still so scary and so great because I can just tell they're more authentic than all the Reddit ones or 4chan ones that are, novels and they're just obviously not the realest, but these are great. So please check the top comment or the description and send in your story. And it'll probably be read in a future video. I really just read all the stories that reach my inbox, unless they are really dumb or really short and they don't really even have a plot. But yeah, thank you so much you guys for sending in your stories, for those who did. And thank you so much for watching. If you watched to the end, you guys are the best. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Comment down below any more video ideas you might want to see in the future and any other feedback for this video. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. And this is Snook, and I'll see you next time.